All right, let's talk about accounts receivable. I know it's a super exciting topic, but here we go. So we're going to talk about a really high accounts receivable. I'm talking like when you go in and you don't even want to pull the accounts receivable report because it's just too much, and your heart races a little bit and your stomach sinks and you're like, I really don't want to look at this, right? But you have a problem because it's too high, right? So we're going to talk about how to actually tackle that. Now, I recommend if you have an overworked or an understaffed billing department, I really highly recommend that you bring in somebody else to work your accounts receivable, right? I do not recommend that you start pushing an overworked billing department to also start working the old backlogged accounts receivable and cleaning that up, right? And the reason is this: they are already struggling with just keeping things going in present time, right? So they need help there. If they're overworked or unorganized or whatever, they need assistance to get that running smoothly, right? Because something that's happening there is contributing to this out of control accounts receivable. So you sort of have like two sides of it, right? You have what's happening currently that's contributing to the accounts receivable, and then you have all this mess that goes back however many years that also has to be handled. So if this isn't functioning properly and it's overworked and it's burdened and whatever is going on there, bring somebody else in, bring an intern in, bring someone who has a coding certification or billing certification, but not a lot of experience, right? And just let them start hammering, right? Somebody who's hungry, let them start hammering on those accounts receivables, right? Now, obviously they're going to need to be a little bit trained on how to do it, but someone like that who really needs experience, who's really, finished school and they really want a job, they're really good to really get them on the accounts receivable and let them prove themselves, right? Because I'll tell you, somebody coming out of school as a biller or a coder who has no experience, they can't find a job anywhere. But somebody who can come out and say, hey, yeah, look at this. I went into this office and they had this accounts receivable and I collected this much and blah, blah, blah. And here's my letter of recommendation. That's a valuable person, right? So get somebody hungry like that in that case, right? If your billing department can have it, if they can handle it, then okay, then you can say okay, during this period of time every week, everybody's going to work old accounts receivable, right? Or you can take one person and you can designate that, right? But make it very specific. Make it okay, during this time, this is what we do. Otherwise, insurance companies are busy trying to confuse you all the time. So when you throw that in there and it's not very specific about when you're going to do it, it becomes problematic. Okay, now when you tackle accounts receivable, right, here's what you're going to do first. First is you're going to make sure all of your EOBs that you have that have not been entered are entered, right? Just make sure they're entered. Whatever you have, enter them in there, right? Because otherwise you're going to be calling on claims and you already have an EOB and they're paid and you're wasting time. So the first thing is any EOB backlog, you get that caught up, get that entered. Then you actually have as accurate of an accounts receivable as you possibly can, okay? That's step number one. Then I usually break it down. I usually break the accounts receivable down by payer, and I start with the ones that, I look at two things. I look at who's our biggest payer, right? Where do we see the most money from? And what's the timely filing deadline, right? What timely filing issues am I potentially working with, right? Because if I find that there are claims that are not submitted, you want to definitely have that timely filing in mind, right? Medicare, you have a year, but some insurance companies, you've got as little as 90 days, right? Or, even with auto insurance, you might only have 30 days to first get that rolling, right? So I kind of jockey those two things, and then I break them down. I don't just blindly just start resubmitting claims. I'll go okay, good. We're going to tackle Blue Cross, right? So I break it down that way, right? Because you want to start, where's going to be your biggest payoff right away? Where are you going to most likely see money coming in? Because past a certain point, they get old enough and it's just administrative work. It's a matter of writing things off and getting them off the books because it's just not collectible anymore, right? So, but we want, usually when we're tackling accounts receivable, we want to see that money come in first. So pay attention to what is your biggest carrier, right? You could start there. Just for fun, start there. Start with Blue Cross if that's your biggest one, whatever. Modified by what is your timely filing. And the first thing that I will do is I'll go in and resubmit. Resubmit anything that there's no EOB, we can't ever verify that it's been submitted, we have no idea, but timely filing is about to run out, and resubmit, right? So if one insurance company is 90 days, go back to that stuff that is about to like go past timely filing and make sure that it was submitted, right? Because that's you're just throwing money away if you pass that timely filing deadline, right? And here's the thing, when you do that, you need to pay attention to your scrubbed and rejected claims in your clearinghouse. So in your clearinghouse, that's where they're going to look for things like missing date of birth, invalid codes. I see a lot of claims get denied because doctors are used to using the same diagnosis code for patients, but that code became invalid a year ago and there's a new code to replace it and nobody knows, and claims are just getting kicked back because the code is not valid. But claims that get kicked back by the clearinghouse are not ever making it to the insurance company. So that timely filing, the clock is still ticking, right? So resubmit whatever you think. If you think it might not have been submitted, resubmit it, and then watch those clearinghouse rejections, because those still have not been submitted if they're being kicked back for something like that, right? So that's your first thing, right? Let's try to avert the crises of timely filing as best as we can, okay? And then just get in there. I usually pick one insurance company and just work on that one, because then you can, sometimes you can get someone really helpful and they'll go over a lot of claims with you at one time. But that gives you like a target, right? You can go like, okay, good. We've gotten through everything in Blue Cross Blue Shield that we can possibly do. Let's move on to Aetna, right? It's just a way to organize it so that it doesn't feel confusing and overwhelming, right? Because remember, the insurance company's game is to confuse you and overwhelm you. So everything we can do to keep organization in and to sort of calm that confusion and overwhelm is highly, highly beneficial, and will keep morale high and keep production happening. So I also wrote a blog article on this particular topic. You can head over there and read that as well. And of course, if you need help, let me know, but hopefully that helps you tackle your high accounts receivable.